Today, I want to welcome Sean Quigley. And biggest challenge is going to be having this conversation within the time frame. Sean's a former Marine, so I love him already. And every time we talk, it's just we could literally talk for hours. But the things I want you to walk away with today is Sean has been a leader of men for many years, and he has an important message today for you to learn about leadership in your business. He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. He flew helicopters. He flew the president's helicopter. And when he got out of the Marine Corps, he joined Deloitte and led and helped people figure out crisis management and resilience. Now Sean has his own business called Knighthawk Consulting, and he's based up in Strasburg, Virginia, which is just west of DC. It's beautiful land. And so I'm really excited to have Sean on today. Sean, welcome.
Thanks, Craig. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. I'm almost sorry we have to interrupt our conversation to do the podcast.
I know it's what people don't always understand. I can meet any Marine, and it's from the second we meet, we just have a common bond, and it's like we've known each other for years. And I'm so thankful to be a part of an organization, part of the Marine Corps, that creates that type of brotherhood. And and apologies to those in the other services, but I always thank God that I was able to be a Marine as opposed to some other branch. I just feel like God shined on me and allowed me to join the Marine Corps.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. There's something about our shared experience. I like to tell people that when they say, "Hey, what's the difference about being a Marine?" I said, "Well, you just said it. We are Marines. You join the Air Force or you join the Army, but you become a Marine. And that's something different. That's powerful. And you don't really understand it until you are one."
Yeah. Well, I can say this, when I was learning how to walk again, I don't know how I would have made it through that if it hadn't been for the Marine Corps, for the mindset that they gave me.
There's something about that boot camp or OCS, whatever your experience, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. You're going to be tested. But as you get up and you run, you jump, you climb, you swim, whatever the case may be, and you see others doing it next to you, there's some sort of cohesion there that just fires everybody up collectively. And I think that fire just continues to burn in us. And it clearly did in you to be able to recover the way you did.
Well, and one of the things that drove me was, whether it was my PTs or people around me, they knew that I was a Marine. And when I thought about how I was going to recover, I was going to recover the way a Marine recovers. I wasn't going to recover like a normal person.
Yeah. Yeah. Bring it on. Make it harder. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
you should have got a couple of the pain is weakness leaving the body t-shirts.
Yeah. Yeah, I do Camp Gladiator, and I can't tell you the number of mornings I was at Camp Gladiator standing over at the side puking. And but hey. So anyway, we're going to reminisce about the Marine Corps. We can spend the whole show talking about this. So for those listening, I promise we're going to get to leadership in business. But before we go there, tell us, what did you do in the Marine Corps? Give us kind of the quick flyover of what you did.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fantastic. I actually, like you said, I went to the Naval Academy. I thought I was going to be a Navy pilot. That's what I wanted to do. I saw Top Gun when I was a junior in high school. You can't help but be swayed by such things. And I actually had to go to prep school because I wasn't academically qualified. So I enlisted in the Navy. I went to prep school, fabulous experience, made lifelong friends, went to the Naval Academy, finished plebe year, went to my first cruise. I was on the battleship Missouri. And I had a bit of an experience with one of the Navy OODs one night on watch. And I came down to breakfast in the wardroom. Beautiful, BB-63, the USS Missouri, beautiful ship, had been reactivated for Desert Storm. And I'm eating breakfast in there. I just had this bad experience. But there's two Marine officers on board because there's a platoon of Marines. And they're sitting down there with their sleeves rolled up and their high and tights, and nobody's talking to them. And I thought, that's what I want. I want some of that. And I didn't talk to them either.
Yeah.
But from then on, I decided that's what I'm going to do. So I finished, I graduated middle of my class, I went to flight school, had helicopters chosen for me, but they say that the aircraft you fly tends to match your personality. Absolutely played out for me. I did 5 years in my first squadron, deployed to the Med a couple of times. I was the air officer at 2nd Reconnaissance Battalion, 2nd Force Recon Company. Got to do a bunch of cool things, meet a bunch of fabulous Marines, get a real taste of I say the real Marine Corps. I spent some time as a ROTC instructor. I went overseas to Japan, took my family. I was on a staff over there. I did the flying for HMX-1 and direct support to the president, which was a fabulous experience. I got to go some very unique places. I played a lot of free golf, went to a lot of cool sporting events, and also stretched my box quite a bit. And then I finished at Training and Education Command in Quantico in 2015. I retired out of there. I was supervising all training for pre-deploying units. And then I joined, very fortunate to join Deloitte as I retired.
Wow. Now, one thing I don't think most people realize, people say, hey, Uncle Sam's invested heavily in you and he's going to protect you. One of the things I've heard is, especially with CH-46s, if you fly more than 1,000 hours in a CH-46, you're going to have back problems. Is that true?
I got an MRI the year before I retired on my back, and the doc throws the film up there, and I'm looking at it, and you can see, and I'd never seen a spine before, but you can see the vertebrae and then the discs, and the vertebrae and the discs. Well, 3 of my discs were just flat and black.
Oh,
And he said, yeah, well, yeah, and I said, what does all that mean? And he said, you got the back of a 40-year-old helicopter pilot. Yeah, I bet it probably hurts a little bit. I said, what can I do? And he said, buy an inversion table. That was the prescription, buy an inversion table. So yeah, that's what they are back there. And not only 1,000, try 2,500 plus. It's a lot of sitting in a metal bucket, just going like this for 3 hours. It's something else. I'm actually pretty fortunate. I've made fitness and physical fitness and taking care of myself such a priority because I want to be able to continue to walk and play with my kids and now my grandkids well beyond, my 70s and hopefully into my 80s if I, God willing, last that long.
yeah. Well, I hate it that your career in the Marine Corps made such a mess of your back. And I wish they would do something. It's one of those problems I wish they would fix. I just don't think many people realize the price our pilots make in serving the country.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've got a couple of friends who ejected from Harriers. They say the stress on the spine in that ejection protocol is 10 12 G's, something like that. It's unbelievable. I'd be curious to see what an x-ray of their spine looks like.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. So
frightening.
anyway, you get out of the Marine Corps and you went into Deloitte doing crisis management and resilience. What's that mean?
Yeah.
What'd that look like?
It was a continuation of what in the DoD we call COOP, of continuity of operations. Basically, when something happens to your organization, when some sort of disruption is so significant that you are unable to accomplish your mission, how do you deal with it and how do you recover from it? So what we would help do is identify those things, those possible triggers that could cause some sort of mission degradation to the point where you can't accomplish your mission. We'd help them with our clients with some sort of framework, some sort of process, some sort of exercise, tools, if you will, that they can train on and practice so that when that disruption occurs, they can execute this process and they can get back to being mission capable. Maybe not full up, maybe not functioning at 110% like they'd like to be, but they can get the systems back on track so they can accomplish the mission. It's very similar. I'd like to say it's very similar to being a helicopter pilot. You're always looking for the bad thing to happen, and you're always building a plan of what you're going to do when it happens and where you're going to land.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, that's a mindset. Again, that's a mindset that I got out of the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
I
That's why
remember.
we're good at it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I left, so I spent 5 months in the Philippines where you had to literally grow eyes in the back of your heads or you were going to be in trouble fast. And I go up to Japan and I'm walking back to base one night and this girl gets off a bike and starts walking with me. And it's dark and I'm like, what is she doing? What's her goal? And I start running scenario planning in my head of what she want, what she going to do, and how will I respond? And I'm just sitting there and I'm assessing everything around me, trying to figure out what my
Mm-hmm.
options
Mm-hmm.
are, what my avenues of escape, because, for those that don't realize it, Marine Corps kind of frowns on going to foreign countries and beating up on the locals, even if it's warranted. They have sort of a dim view towards that. And so you don't want to escalate the situation. You want to get out of the situation. And as I finally passed the road where I would have to turn right to go to the main gate of the base, I say, well, this is my turn. And she says, okay, well, thank you. Have a good night. And I later realized she was just practicing her English. But I just
Oh,
spent 5 months in a place where no, they weren't practicing their English. They were trying to figure out how to relieve you of your money or your health or something else.
yeah. But that's a sense of awareness. We call it situational awareness in aviation. Situational awareness is key. You got to know where you are, what you're doing, what may happen next, what's happening around you to protect yourself and those for whom you are responsible. And that's what you were doing. You were just conditioned.
Yeah. So you were doing that for companies. Do you find that companies, for you and me, this is natural. We just think this way. Do you find that companies struggle with this sort of contingency planning?
Yeah, because it's number one, it's unpleasant. Number two, it's like I used to equate it to buying an insurance policy, buying buying life insurance, right? You buy that life insurance policy, particularly if it's permanent, whole life, right? It's really expensive. You got to pay for it forever. You're not even going to be around to take advantage of it, but it sure will take care of those you leave behind.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make an investment in it. You just have to acknowledge that this is the thing to do to take care of those who are going to be here when I'm not. And I think business owners, in a way, see that sort of contingency planning the same way. They're so focused on making their widgets and tightening up the margins around making those widgets that to invest in something like contingency planning for when things could go wrong, they feel like it pulls them away from their main thing. It costs them money. It takes time. And this is why we would be trigger agnostic. And we'd say that, hey, what we're most concerned about is the effects of that disruption. So we wouldn't plan for, or we wouldn't help them plan for a bomb or a cyber attack or a specific thing, but rather something that affects their technology, their operations, or their people. So they only really need like 3 templates to be able to apply it to that thing. And that would make it easier for them to swallow and not feel like it was so daunting and pull them away from making their widgets. Because anything that's not directly focused on making the widget sounds like extra to them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. So high level, what are those 3 templates? What do those templates look like?
Well, they're all in a way, they're all based on what do I know? What do I need to know? Are the right people in the room? And what who else do I basically have to attract or, keep informed? Stakeholders,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of like what you were taught, the general orders of the century, and stand and watch. You're the duty officer, you're the duty NCO. What do I know and who do I need to tell? In other words, how do I build situational awareness?
Mm-hmm.
This disruption occurs. You're a small manufacturing firm and you have a key machine breakdown. Okay, immediately I'm the operator or I'm the manager. The operator comes and tells me. I ask him what happened, how long do we think it's going to be gone, or how long do we think it's going to be down. I ask him the basic, 5 W's, if you will. Now I have to take that information, I have to pass that on to up the chain, if you will, and I have to anticipate what their questions are going to be. And theoretically, I probably need to anticipate what his boss, what the president's questions are going to be, so that I'm providing as much information to build their situational awareness so they can make a decision to get us back to being mission capable, whatever those decisions may be. And so when we would do this with particularly government agencies, the executives in the room around the table, we'd convene a crisis action team and we'd prepare a document that was, we'd call it the COP, the Common Operating Picture. And we'd just have a couple of boxes on there that were kind of the bare minimum of what had come up through the chain so that we could all look at the same information and make a decision. Look around the room. Do we have who we need here? Hey, if this is an operations thing, is my plant manager here? If this is a technology thing, the CTO is here. Is there anybody else you need to help make the decision, CTO? Because most of this is going to fall on you today. Yes, I need, my IT architecture guy and my cyber guy. Okay, you got 5 minutes. Go do what you need to do. We're going to be back here at 15:06, that sort of thing. And it's key that you move quickly. That golden hour, we literally called it the golden hour. That first hour after the disruption, a whole lot of stuff needs to happen then. And you have to be thinking about, how do you keep your stakeholders informed? That machine just went down. Do customers need to be informed? Does the supply chain need to be informed? Is that going to affect the shipment I'm supposed to take of raw material if I can't use any of it? All those sorts of questions all immediately come to the surface, and to have the right people there to answer those questions is really key, because otherwise you're stumbling and you're guessing.
So I've got two scenarios I want to throw out to you, and maybe this fits into what you're talking about. Maybe it's different. I'm really curious.
Okay.
The first situation is, nobody anticipated on August 22nd, 2021, that I was going to be put in a coma and maybe not coming back. And
Yeah.
and fortunately, my team just kept running the business without me.
How about that?
So in terms of this, I mean, obviously I couldn't be in the room. I was taken out unexpectedly. I gotta admit, I'm listening to you. I didn't have any of those things in place. The one thing I did was I would let my team kind of bob around the waterline until they figured out how to swim, going into that. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when the water rose, they knew how to swim.
Yeah. Point their nose in the air, right? Yeah. So what could you have done? What could you have done prior to, right?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, from one angle, I could have had some more documentation, but we were in such a groove that we knew exactly what, we had a process that we practiced every single day, that when I was removed, they just kept doing that same process.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's actually something we like to do in a TT. I mean, that we used to do in a TTX. We'd take the head decision maker and we'd get an hour or two into the exercise, and then we'd call it a measle. We'd inject a measle and we'd say, okay, you're the director who's convened the crisis action team. We just take you out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, Craig is no longer functioning. He had a heart attack or a stroke or a car accident or something. He's not here. What are you guys going to do? And if you don't have a succession plan, all of a sudden you realize, oh goodness, we need a succession plan. If you don't have written SOPs of a functioning process already, that's got to be something more than just tribal lore. Because if you pull enough of the right people out, all of a sudden that tribal lore doesn't stand up anymore, right?
Yeah.
You need, and it does it need to be written in a book, in a binder? Well, maybe not, but it needs to exist somewhere other than up here. Because every one of those positions, your C-suite, your key managers and advisors, everybody needs to have somebody who can step into their role. And I'd even offer that you probably need somebody who can be a third and step in.
Yeah.
So you got a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary. Probably sounds kind of familiar from your Marine Corps experience. Now, everybody doesn't have to have exactly the same skills or be the same level of authority or responsibility. But in that crisis action situation, that disruption that's preventing your company from functioning and making your widgets, then all bets are kind of off. And we got to do what we can to keep this thing afloat. And so if that means that Sean's going to step up 2 seats to come and join the table because I happen to be the duty expert on this disruption, even though Craig's not here, then the rest of the group has to accept me. I'm making the subject matter input on this thing to help everyone else make their decision. And you, as the CEO, you need to have a designated number 2, absolutely, who can act in your absence. Because everybody then is immediately going to turn to them. XO, operations officer, the CO gets shot, who's stepping up? The XO.
Yeah. And for the uninitiated, XO is executive officer.
Thank you. Yeah. The number 2, the number 2, we would call it devolution of command.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the other situation. And apparently this has changed at Apple, but back during the era of Steve Jobs, and a little bit of context, Apple was a fledgling company until they invented the iPod. The iPod was the thing that really made Apple a very, very profitable company. And one of the engineers from the iPod team found out that iPods were leaving the factory without being fully charged. He called China. He shut down the production line. An engineer shut down the production line and said, we need to stop and start charging these iPods. The guy kept his job. It was something in the culture. There was something in the culture where he knew he could, not only he could do that, but he should do that. And he was able to make an executive level decision. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of scares me. I think I'd be calling, Tim Cook was the COO at the time. I think I'd be at least calling Tim and saying, hey, Tim, you may want to fire me, but I think we should shut down the production line to fix this. And so that's fascinating. And I'm interested.
You know where I think that comes from?
What?
In the Marine Corps, we'd call it commander's intent.
Yeah.
In the private sector, we refer to it as executive's intent, right? The commander, the boss, he can't give everybody specific instructions for everything, but he can issue his guidance. He can issue his and share this over and over. And it may just sound like his vision and his values and reiterating the purpose of the organization. But that engineer who shut that thing down, any of your audience who knows anything about Steve Jobs knows that everything has to look and feel perfect for the user.
Right.
And that example you just used, absolutely, I can see Steve saying, oh yeah, shut that thing down. Charge all those before they go out the door. I want everybody who opens the box to be able to plug it in and use it immediately. That's absolutely the right call. So by issuing that executive intent, that commander's intent, everybody knows the kind of left and right lateral limits in which they can operate to make those decisions in the absence of specific instruction.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, and that's powerful. And it's powerful to have organizations where people have that boldness to act on that intent.
Oh, yeah. Right. They have to feel safe and empowered. So safe that what they're doing does comply with the command, with the president or the executive's intent, and safe that they know that by complying and taking action, they're not risking essentially their own skin in a way, which is the kind of the wrong phrase to use, but they know that the repercussions aren't necessarily cataclysmic.
Yeah. So for those listening, I just threw Sean two big curveballs that he took them, he swung at them, he saw them come in, he's like, oh crap, what's that? I'm going to swing at it. And you did it amazingly. But
Oh, thank you.
I think that's a lot of what we're talking about. But in the few minutes that we have left, I don't feel like we'll be able to do justice to this, but there were two things that you mentioned. One is that you turn managers into leaders. And the second is that there's a mismatch. There's a misunderstanding, a generational misunderstanding that's holding leaders back from getting things out of the millennials that they're looking for. And I want to make sure we cover that before we wrap up.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I actually I wrote a paper on what I call trends in this generations thing, and I've delivered a webinar multiple times on this. I believe that generationally in the workforce, Gen X and boomers have kept this mentality of we're in it for the long haul no matter what. For the pension, the gold watch, salary, security is more important than anything else. We became the helicopter parents of the millennial generation, that it's perfectly okay to fail and lose. And you still get a good job, whether you hit a home run or you strike out. Good job, Johnny. Oh, and then even if you're the last place team, you still get a trophy. So what we've done is we've continued to reward failure with the same sort of recognition that we would have received had we won. And I think that has destroyed a sense of competition. And therefore, what millennials, and I know I'm being very broad and categorically perhaps unfair in some cases, but their work style preferences are different. They're much more interested in flexibility, feedback, collaboration, and the social values of the organization than us old fogies were. So they don't necessarily want to have to come to the office or come to the workspace. They want to be told that they're doing a good job. And even if they aren't, most of them are mature enough to accept that negative feedback's okay too. Just tell me. I just got to hear it. I got to know. I got to have that feedback. Collaborating as a team, because they spend a lot of time on organized teams. They don't know how to play pickup basketball. They only know how to get schlepped from gymnastics to dance to, to soccer practice to whatever. They're very comfortable with that structure. And so ad hoc things are difficult for them. And I think Gen X managers and boomer managers are trying to force our structure on them. And I think we need to meet halfway a little better.
What's that look like?
That's a difficult thing to do. I think it starts with listening. I think it starts with listening, and you hear people use the phrase active listening all the time.
Yeah.
What does that really mean? I think it means, look, man, pay full attention. Put this thing down. All right. Turn the TV off, shut the door. Don't invite them to your office. Go meet your young employee at a coffee shop or at the library or in the park or someplace else that this is for a feedback situation, because you bring them to your office and there's this aura of you're going to get it. And so if you make them the total and complete object of your attention by putting your phone down, closing the laptop, shutting off the TV, all that sort of stuff, use their first name, listen to understand rather than listening to respond. Now, all of a sudden, you become a real person to them. And that's really important to some of our younger generation. I think it's Stephen Covey's rule number 6. An individual, and I'll butcher this, but an individual's first name to them is the sweetest sound in the world. Right? Think about it. I mean, when the sergeant major or the CO, ever called you Craig. I mean, can you imagine such a thing? Probably not. And that probably wouldn't have been a good thing. But if they had, oh, how about that? That's amazing. They know who I am.
That's such a great tip broadly. If you think about the number of emails that you fire off that don't say, hi, Sean, or, something like that.
Yeah.
If, let me just throw this out because you hit on something really valuable. If you decide today, if you're listening and you decide today, I'm never sending another email that somewhere doesn't mention the name of the person I'm speaking out to. You put that in place, you're going to start seeing a difference because people love to hear their name.
Yeah. Yeah. They tune in a way that they don't otherwise.
Yeah.
It's so special. That's why people like text messages more than email, because they know it's coming to them,
Yeah.
right?
Well, let me ask you this because I hear what you're saying. And here's a challenge that I run into. Now, in any organization, you need a diversity of people. You need people that are great at churning the crank. You need
Yep,
people that
yep.
are great. But some of the most valuable people to me are people that I can throw a unstructured problem at, that people who can operate outside of well-defined boundaries, where kind of like that executive intent that you were talking about. They know the result I'm looking for. I don't care how they get it, as long as it's ethical and integrity is preserved, of course. But I mean, I have somebody that works for me named Elena, and she came up to me one day and she was talking, and I was listening, and I said, Elena, let me see if I have this right. You're saying there was a problem, you identified the problem, you fixed the problem, and you're just updating me. She's like, yeah. I was like, oh my goodness, bless you.
Exactly what should happen, right? I mean, you're the boss, you're the CEO. You empower her, you give her the authority to do that, and she does it.
Yeah. So
Beautiful.
how do we take these people that have been raised by helicopter parents that don't do that naturally? Is there a pathway to get them operating that way where they can operate with less definitions, less fewer boundaries?
Oh, I think so, because I think they have the inherent initiative, but it's been squashed over time, and they feel like they have to slide into these structured frameworks. I think if you open it up and you give less specific orders and instructions, and encourage your VPs and your C-suite and your managers to do the same thing, not necessarily to be vague, but to be less prescriptive, to encourage them to solve the problem, to empower them to bring a better idea than I have. What I used to like to do with my project team, two things. Number one, if I was really hell bent on the way I wanted it to happen, I might tell them what I want and then ask for, okay, now shoot holes in my plan. What's wrong with it? What can we do better? What have I missed? Where are we going to go wrong? So we're doing our own contingency planning. The other
Mhm.
thing I'd like to do is just say, hey, by next week, we need a thing that X, right? The result. Here's the result of what it needs to look like. Help me figure out how we get there. And then what we're doing is we're brainstorming and everybody's participating. And when Craig has a really good idea, I call him out on that. And I thank him for contributing that. Who can help Craig make that thing happen by tomorrow so we can work it into the plan to get the product ready for next week? And you start building a team by encouraging and asking for that input. And then everybody who's participating feels like now they really are part of the team.
Yeah.
They're more than just playing their own part.
Yeah.
They're participating in a group and contributing to the big win. And here's the thing, if we pull this off by next week, there's there's potential spot bonus, or there's some sort of incentive, whatever that may be, and appropriate, because I mean, just like a dog, everybody likes a treat for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be big. It can be as simple as public recognition.
Yep.
That's why everybody loves badges.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's, I feel bad because I feel like there's so much more that we need to dig into here. But
Yeah, we
unfortunately,
didn't even talk about some of the things I thought we were going to. That's fine though. I love this.
but the, it's very clear. There are businesses that could be radically transformed. And one of the things you do is you actually speak to businesses. And so
Yeah.
anybody that wants to hear you come talk or wants to connect with you somehow to talk about, their business being resilient, them making managers into leaders, them crossing this generational gap, how do they reach you?
Yeah. Easiest thing is via email, Sean, SEAN, at knighthawkconsulting.com. Nighthawk starts with a K and ends with a K. And I've got a website, same thing, www.knighthawkconsulting.com. There's a schedule a consultation button on there with me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn as well. My name's spelled just like that. And if you look for somebody who's a connection to Craig Andrews, you'll probably find the right guy.
Sean, this has been awesome. Thanks for being on Leaders and Legacies. Semper Fi.
Hoorah. Take care. Semper Fi.